The early hours of the morning, 1:15 a.m. Eastern Time, U.S. and partner forces began striking targets across Iran, the Israelis and the Americans, on a mission, and CENTCOM making that mission clear. They wanted to dismantle the Iranian regime's security apparatus. They wanted to neutralize what officials are describing as imminent threats. Overnight hours in Tel Aviv, we've been watching the skies above Israel, just in case we see any more missile interceptions or drone interceptions. It's something that we have seen sporadically throughout the night. This is the latest we've heard from President Trump, who, by the way, is in southern Florida. He was at Mar-a-Lago. They kind of set up a makeshift situation room, if you will, at his Florida estate. The president sending this out. Khamenei, one of the most evil people in history, is dead. This is not only justice for the people of Iran, but for all great Americans, and those people from many countries throughout the world that have been killed or mutilated by Khamenei and his gang of bloodthirsty thugs. He was unable to avoid our intelligence and highly sophisticated tracking systems, and working closely with Israel, there was not a thing he or the other leaders that have been killed along with him could do. This is the single greatest chance for the Iranian people to take back their country. We are hearing that many of their IRGC, military, and other security and police forces no longer want to fight and are looking for immunity from us. As I said last night, now they can have immunity. Later, they only get death. Hopefully, the IRGC and police will peacefully merge with the Iranian patriots and work together as a unit to bring back the country to the greatness that it deserves. That process should soon be starting in that not only the death of Khamenei, but the country has been, in only one day, very much destroyed and even obliterated. The heavy and pinpoint bombing, however, will continue uninterrupted throughout the week or as long as necessary to achieve our objective of peace throughout the Middle East and indeed the world. If the president sends anything out throughout the night, we'll keep you posted as soon as we hear it. Let's bring in retired Marine Intelligence Officer, national security analyst, and the host of the Strat podcast, Hal Kemper. Hal was up late with us last night. He and Shauna Kalafi covering this as it was breaking. Hal, we've had some time to process the story since then. I want to focus on these last couple sentences in Trump's post. He says the heavy and pinpoint bombing will continue uninterrupted throughout the week or as long as necessary to achieve our objective. When you read that, what does it say to you?
That says to me that they're going to continue to hit these targets aggressively. They have a target list. There's an air tasking order, obviously, that goes with all of this. And they have a schedule of what they're going to hit based on what they have and what they can get out there. The first strike, if you will, or first series of strikes was huge. It's not clear how many American planes were involved, but the reports are there was over 200 Israeli Defense Force warplanes that were involved in that initial strike. And that's the one that went after the decapitation strike, taking out Ayatollah Khamenei. Not only Khamenei, but it took out some of his top leaders, the head of the Revolutionary Guard Corps, his defense minister, the head of intelligence, and the list goes on. Took them all out in one fell swoop, along with a number of other senior regime officials in that one. It's not clear how many other IRGC, Revolutionary Guard Corps members were taken out in other locations with a series of strikes, but truly devastating. If you look at the slow response of retaliation, it tells you something happened, something that really slowed their ability to make decisions, to do command and control, to strike. Eventually they did retaliate, but it would almost seem like it was something automatic that was pre-scripted that they do, but it wasn't a clear decision chain that took place here. So that tells me that what we're doing as we get the battle damage assessment, we're seeing is working. There certainly will be adjustments. There always are adjustments as various things are discovered, uncovered, whatever, throughout the course of the campaign. But it does say the pressure will be on. What's interesting, I thought today, was when President Trump said that members of the Revolutionary Guard Corps had asked, apparently the U.S. or Israel, it's not quite clear, but had asked about immunity, asked if they lay down their arms, if they quit supporting the regime, if they support the people trying to replace the regime. that they could get immunity. If there is a schism, a sizable schism within the Revolutionary Guard Corps, that opens up the opportunity for the non theocratic military, the secular law enforcement authorities to maybe step in and not support the regime. And once that happens, then it's game over for well, it's obviously game over for Khamenei, but it'd be game over for everybody surrounding him and everybody who is close to him.
The IDF and the Israeli Air Force releasing videos like this throughout the day. We've also seen a number of videos released by the United States, including this one right here, showing some of this operation, which caught a lot of us off guard. Anytime we've seen major military activity ever since the October 7th attack, anytime something big happens, it happens in the overnight hours. This one happened in the light of day. I was reading that in Iran, Saturdays are technically the beginning of the week there, so that's why you see reports of people at work or at school. It's because it's basically a Monday over there. Hal, we've been asking our audience to send in the questions that matter most to them. I think this one is on a lot of people's minds. Carson is in Florida. Could this turn into a war? The word war is being thrown around a lot today, Hal. What does war mean in the context of everything that we've been tracking in the past 24 hours?
Well, technically, under international law, it is a war. All right. There is an armed conflict. The U.S. and Israel struck Iran, although I could certainly go back, as President Trump did, and talk about all the decades past when Iran has attacked Americans and attacked others around the world, and some of the vile, vicious, horrific things that the regime is responsible for. But this is, under international law, what we did, what Israel did, what the U.S. did, constitutes an act of war. We used armed force on their soil, on their sovereign soil. So that is a technical war. Now, I think the question is this going to be a big war versus a smaller war? I think what you're seeing right now may be indicative of what's to come. Now, with that said, the longer it goes on, the greater the chance that we will suffer casualties. So far, we've been very fortunate that no casualties have been incurred that we're aware of U.S. forces, but that could change, whether it be retaliation by the Iranian regime or whether they are able to manifest some sort of air defense to take down one of our aircraft, or, as does sometimes happens, as you have intensive air operations, sometimes aircraft have mechanical problems, or there's pilot error. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. So we will probably take, it's very likely we could take some casualties. We may be fortunate not, but it's very likely that we could. And but it's not going to be a war like we're traditionally thinking of war in terms of something like Iraqi freedom or maybe Desert Storm. This is different. It's more of an air and missile campaign. There may be some limited special operations stuff on the ground, but nothing significant. Not like you saw with OIF and Desert Storm, where there was this massive ground assault that went through through Kuwait or went through Iraq. You're just not going to see that. That's just not there.
For those that are not regular viewers of Live Now, Hal is a retired Marine intelligence officer. What kind of intelligence operations? I'm not asking you to give us all the tricks of the trade, but in order for them to pinpoint Khamenei and get him when they could actually get him, what goes into a pinpoint strike like that?
Well, obviously, that's not something, if I did know, I would even mention. I'll tell you how it works. We actually have a crystal ball and we just look at it.
Oh, yeah.
But there's a variety of different things. Could be satellites, could be signals intelligence. We're listening to anything from could be communications online, or it could be cell phone conversations or phone conversations, whatever it is. All those sorts of things. Could be human intelligence, folks who are actually there. It was certainly seen in June during the 12-day war, before and after, during and after, that the Israelis had basically penetrated a lot of facets of Iranian society. The Iranian government had tremendous human intelligence capability. And so I would not discount the possibility that Israel had a human intelligence source or sources that could have helped them with that decapitation strike. That's very possible. But it'd be a variety of different means. There's intelligence has various different disciplines, and there's different sources and methods by which we derive these things, and then we analyze them and come to conclusions of what things mean, or what they could mean, or what they should mean. And based on that, it goes into planning, and there was extensive planning that went into this, and that's how they would know if somebody's going to be at a certain place at a certain time.
Within the past hour or so, we did learn officially from Iranian state media that Khamenei is dead. They say that he was at his compound in downtown Tehran when the initial attack began, and his death at his office, quote, showed that he consistently stood among the people and at the forefront of his responsibilities, confronting what officials call global arrogance. Again, state TV saying that within the past hour here. We continue to watch these live vantage points at cities like Tel Aviv, how the Iranians, they have been responding to everything that's transpired in the past day, and that has come in the form of missiles being launched, missiles being intercepted. We do know that the Iranians have had their missiles crash into a number of their neighbors' territories. In fact, a number of Arab states have released joint statements condemning what Iran has been doing since Khamenei was struck. Can you give us a synopsis, if you will, of the major players in the region, the Saudi Arabias of the region, the UAE? These are some of the nations that have condemned Iran's behavior today. Can you just expand on the significance of what we've been watching?
Oh, absolutely. Obviously, you got three combatants. You got Iran, Israel, and the U.S. They're actually the ones who are directly involved. Now, within the Persian Gulf or the Arabian Gulf, depending on which side of the Gulf you're on, will really dictate how you describe the Gulf. But within the Gulf itself, there are the countries called the Gulf Cooperation Council. This goes back to Desert Storm. These are countries in there, for example, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, UAE, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia. These are all members of the GCC. There's about a half dozen of them. And they have all come out and condemned what Iran has been doing. Now, with that said, the U.S. has bases in Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, the UAE. So one could assume that the Iranians were targeting those bases. In the case of Bahrain, where Fifth Fleet headquarters is located, they apparently hit a warehouse there. So one of the missiles did get through, one or two of the missiles. Didn't cause any significant damage or setbacks or anything, but did hit a building that was on the base. But we do have bases there, and you remember Al-Udeid Air Base in Qatar was the base that the Iranians targeted last June. So they are targeting those, but with that, whether it's through incompetence, poor technology, or whatever, they have been missing that and hitting some of these urban areas and some of these areas in these countries that have nothing to do with U.S. military presence or anything to do with the attacks or strikes on Iran. And that's really irritating all of them. And reportedly, Saudi Arabia has been struck. Also, reportedly, the U.S. has aircraft that were launching from Saudi bases and Jordanian bases as well. And so Jordan could come under fire too. Israel has been under fire. Israel has also reportedly been hosting U.S. aircraft that are being used in this overall operation. So all these countries have lined up very clearly against Iran to condemn Iran and condemn what Iran's doing. I should also mention that all these countries that I just referenced would love to see the Shiite, theocratic, autocratic regime that's in Iran go away. They absolutely do not want to see that. Iran has been spreading terrorism and warfare throughout the entire area. I don't want to get into all the Sunni Shia split, but they're kind of two different versions of Islam. Iran represents the Shiite version, and Saudi Arabia is kind of lead for the Sunni version. And most of the countries I just mentioned, well, they're all Sunni countries, although one of them, Bahrain, is actually the largest percentage of the population is Shiite, even though the royal family is Sunni. Anyway, with all that said, they want to see this regime in Iran gone. And even though they came out and said, you cannot use our territory for overflights, you can't launch strikes from our territories, I've been over the Middle East many times, and what they say for public consumption on an overt level and what they're doing on a less overt level are not always the same thing. So I was not surprised once things kicked off that you immediately heard all the countries going, we condemn Iran, we support these strikes in Iran. And I was like, well, that's kind of what I've seen in the past. You know, they can move fairly quickly in changing their policy position, shall we say.
Some figures coming in from CENTCOM. They say the Iranian regime claims to have killed 50 U.S. service members. That's a lie. There have been no reported U.S. casualties. The IRGC claims that a U.S. Navy ship was struck by missiles. Also a lie. No U.S. Navy ship has been struck. The Armada is fully operational. The Iranian regime is claiming severe damage at multiple U.S. bases. Lie. Damage to U.S. installations was minimal and has not impacted operations. So Jen sending this question in, she's in Southern California. A lot of people have this question, given some of what we've been seeing from Iran's neighbors. Jen is asking, is it okay to travel outside the U.S. now? I mean, is there certainly a level of danger given that there are perhaps missiles flying above some of Iran's neighbors, Hal?
Well, what I would say is this. Obviously, when there's this type of stuff going on around the world, it is a little more risky to fly now than it would have been before. Okay. It depends on where you're going as well. The UAE, Dubai, particularly, certainly Doha and Qatar, those are major international hubs. As you know, we've talked about this. I fly through those, certainly Doha quite a bit. And every time there's something that happens over there, the air, and as is happening right now, air traffic gets either stopped or stalled or slowed down, and it's slowed down a lot in the region. So if you're planning on going someplace, you got to look at where you're going to be going through. If you're planning on going through Doha or you're planning on going through Dubai, there's a very good chance you could be delayed. You could be stopped there for days or maybe even longer. Based on whatever's going on at any given time. So obviously a great deal of risk there. Interestingly, just before all this took place, we were talking about what was happening down in Mexico, and obviously all of the, violence that had taken place after the strike, the decapitation strike, if you will, against the head of the Jalisco New Generation cartel, El Mencho, and we're talking about, is it safe to travel in Mexico? I would say right now, you just need to take a very close look at where you're planning on going. Some places probably not a big deal. If you're planning on going over to Europe and you're planning on hanging out in London or Paris or something like that, probably not something to be too concerned about. But if you're planning on going to somewhere in the Indian Ocean or planning on going to somewhere in Africa where you're going to be going through the aforementioned airports I just talked about, then I would take a really hard look at it. And if you can, you might want to delay your plans.
So, CENTCOM also saying this. I thought this was interesting, and I would love your analysis of these weapons. CENTCOM's Task Force Scorpion strike, for the first time in history, they say, used one-way attack drones in combat during Operation Epic Fury. They say these low-cost drones, modeled after Iran's Shahed drones, are now delivering American-made retribution. Okay, Hal, what exactly does a one-way attack drone mean?
Well, I believe we talked about this a couple of days ago. These are the Lucas drones. They're basically low-cost unmanned aerial systems. It's something that we developed. Basically, we kind of copied the Shahed 136 drones. Those are those Iranian drones that the Russians have been using by the literally tens of thousands to attack Ukraine. And so we kind of copied that very simplistic drone sort of approach. And we built our own one-way attack drones, which we call Lucas. And we had deployed one or two squadrons over there, this Task Force Scorpion being the overarching thing that deals with that. But some of the attacks today, as I understand it, were these one-way drones. Now, the only thing I can say about that is they're obviously powerful, but they don't pack as much firepower as you're going to have with a strike aircraft or with a Tomahawk missile. I think the warhead's about 18 kilograms. Now, trust me, you can pack a lot of explosive force into 18 kilograms, but it's not going to be the same thing as if you get hit with a 500-pound bomb or a 1-ton warhead or something like that. But for certain target sets, this is a really good way of going in there and hitting them, particularly if there's air superiority or air supremacy, which means that they really can't stop these drones from coming in. And the psychological effect of drones flying in unhindered, unimpeded, unaddressed by Iranian air defense capabilities. Psychologically, that is incredibly wearing on the defenders, in this case on the Revolutionary Guard Corps, on the Iranian military, and it's going to wear them down. And it also is something that the Iranian people see, and they look at these military elements or defense security elements of the regime and say, these guys can't protect us. They're absolutely useless. And it's time to stand up and do something about that, which is our desired end state, which is to see the regime go away.
So an interesting one coming in from Greg in Phoenix. Greg says, will the Allied forces go after the military infrastructure complexes and ensure to destroy all the drone manufacturing? And what effect would this have on the Russians with Ukraine war if this has taken place, Hal?
That's an excellent question. First off, from what I understand, yes, we've already been going after military infrastructure. So that's already being addressed. I don't know how big it is. We haven't got the battle damage assessment to say how much of that has been impacted. I'm kind of inferring a little bit based on some earlier statements that were made that we were looking at drone manufacturing capabilities. I don't know that we have hit any drone factories right now in Iran. Now, some of the drones that are or a lot of the drones that are manufactured in Iran were being shipped up to Russia, and they were being used to attack Ukraine. However, about a little over 2 years ago, Iran set up a licensing agreement, for lack of a better term, with the Russians, and the Russians actually produced their own Shahed 136 drones. They may produce most of those drones that they use in Russia now. So even if we took out Shahed 136 factory in Iran, that wouldn't stop those drones from showing up in the Russian inventory to be used to attack Ukraine. However, I will say this, Ukraine has a variety of systems, long-range systems that they can use, like the Flamingo cruise missile. And so if the Iranian source of those drones is shut down, that means that maybe they should prioritize attacking the Russian production facilities for those drones and shut down all source of those drones to the Russian military altogether. But that's a decision the Ukrainians would have to make, and that depends on whatever happens with the Iranian campaign or with the campaign against Iran.
As I've kind of just been watching this play out, I've been looking at some of our live pictures, like at Tel Aviv, where we're kind of in the overnight hours here. It's approaching 4:30 in the morning, Israel Standard Time. Let's just take a live look at some of the images coming through. We've got a bunch of different ones. This is Jerusalem, a live look at Jerusalem, a second vantage point of Jerusalem. As I said, Tel Aviv. Here, a little dark, but this is a live vantage point in Doha. Another one in Jerusalem, and then this is northern Israel. So we've got cameras that are just keeping an eye on all these different population centers. One thing that I have a big question about moving forward here, Hal, is if we do see more ballistic missiles from the Iranians or drones, and if they are indeed sent Israel's way, something you and I talked about this past week is the idea that the USS Gerald R. Ford is pretty close to Israel right now. We usually think of the Iron Dome being Israel's protection, but it does have the Iron Dome. But there's also this extra layer of protection. They've got the USS Gerald R. Ford right by. So speak about the defense that Israel has right now and really the defensive capabilities that we've seen not only in Israel and right in the vicinity of Israel, but also some of the defensive capabilities we've seen in some of Iran's Arab neighbors as well.
Well, if you will, I'll start with Gerald R. Ford, and I'm going to move to the Persian Gulf very quickly. The Gerald R. Ford, obviously, carrier has its own air defense system, but really what defines the missile and air defense system for the carrier itself is the escorts around it, these smaller ships that have the Aegis air defense system and a variety of other things. One of the things I'm waiting to see, and I'm waiting to hear more about this, is my understanding is that we have deployed some directed energy and laser capability to intercept drones and maybe even take missiles out. I'm waiting to hear if those are fully deployed, how they're being employed, and if they're having success with those. That would not just be with the Gerald R. Ford Carrier Task Force. That would probably also be in other places. And it could be on the ground as well around some of these air bases. Now, if I may move out, yes, all of those countries that we talked about, they have their own air defense capability, usually using our stuff. I know one of the countries uses our THAAD, our Theater High Altitude Air Defense System, which goes after ballistic missiles high in their arc of trajectory, and then also the Patriot system, which is rather famous, been around for a long time. They've been using those to great effect to intercept ballistic missiles and to intercept drones. And then we have our on-base stuff that we have in and around our military installations. But also, you may recall all those ships that we had sent up into the Persian Gulf. All those ships have their own air defense systems for missiles and drones as well. And they provide an additional layer, actually an early layer to and have traditionally with missiles that were flying over or drones that were being sent over to hit Israel. Well, they'd have to go through these multiple air defense zones in order to get to Israel, some of those on the ships. And so a lot of them were intercepted before they ever even got close to Israeli airspace. But now I imagine more of that is actually intercepting missiles or drones that are aimed at some of those Persian Gulf countries themselves. So there is a very robust air defense system. Of course, one of the stated concerns that was out there in the media was that we would use so much of this air defense weaponry in this campaign that if something were to happen, say, between China and Taiwan, that we wouldn't have the same amount of ammunition that we would want to deal with that other contingency. And that is a simple reality. We have been very busy from a military perspective over the last few years, and so a lot of the inventory that we have has been drawn down to take care of some of these other contingencies.
Hal being generous with his time today. Hal, we'll be checking in soon. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Austin.